Hello and welcome back to VGC Live at Summer Game Fest 2025. I am Jordan Medler, joined by VGC's Andy Robinson and RPG Site's Alex Donaldson. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit hungover, but it was an unexpectedly heavy night, which is also not good when you've flown, as you boys both know.
What time did you wake up?
Well, fucking 4 a.m. at first.
Yeah,
and
me too.
then I was like, I've got to force myself to go back to bed. 4 a.m. was when I woke up and saw that text from you and laughed my arse off, which I won't repeat on video. And then I got back to sleep, probably got another 2 hours, and was at 6:30. I was like, that's it now, I'm not going to get any more.
Well, you can upgrade to an energy drink if you want. We've got a whole fridge.
No, I don't know how this man does it, because having one of those makes me ill for days. So I will stick to the sugary American Sprite, which is probably just as bad for me.
It is.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a gimmick, you know, you've got to love the gimmick. They're like these professional wrestlers that wrestled for 40 years.
Yeah.
When I need my double hips done. It is today, Friday, June 6th. Can we confirm that?
Yeah,
please?
Friday, June 6th at 10:45 in the morning, Los Angeles time.
So we're going to review Xbox's press conference, which is happening in 2 days. We're going to chat about the announcements, what we think of them, and then a wider discussion about why you are seeing this immediately following the Xbox press conference and not on Friday. So we've got a lot to go through here. Most interesting, and since we have you here, Alex, this is obviously the place to start.
And to be clear as well, you're not reading from some emails.
Yeah, we have not been briefed.
Oh yeah,
we've not been briefed.
I think, in fairness, let's say, to be clear, I think all three of us are going to see Xbox. Xbox has a campus at SGF, off separate from the main Playdays event, and so I think all of us are going to see some stuff. So, but the way Xbox does it, or at least has done it this year, is it's a lot of unannounced game. So, like, you've got appointment to see unannounced game, or you've got appointment in some cases to see, like, an announced game, but even then the appointment doesn't actually say what the game is. For
Unannounced game. I guess this is perhaps will highlight the slight absurdity of that situation, that we cannot be trusted to know what game we are seeing. Because many other companies have given us.
Have given us
which
previews.
of course we wouldn't talk about because we're in a kind of a circle of trust there.
But it'll be interesting to see
within this circle of distrust.
Yeah.
Welcome to the VGC.
Let's talk about all of Xbox's announcements.
And it'll be interesting to see if what we get right, if there's anything we get wrong, if there's anything that's missing that we didn't know about.
There was very few things we got wrong at
Game Awards. We pretty
I think
much
we got everything.
I think we were missing a few things, but there was nothing that we thought was going to be there that wasn't. But the things that we were missing were small bits.
Snoopy tennis deals.
Yeah, last year for Xbox, when we were here, the thing started and we had an in-order list and it was completely correct. So it'll be interesting. Things could change, plans change, folks, but I think we'll have the majority of the stuff here. How the Final Fantasy owners can finally shut up. 16 and 7. What do you make of this?
Well, it's been, again, we're talking about what people know. I've known about 16 coming to Xbox for ages, but exactly when that was going to be announced, the goalposts moved quite a few times. So that's, as far as I know, that's shadow drops, I think. So by the time people see this, that will be out. And then 7 Remake will be slated, I guess, as winter, I think.
When the Switch version comes?
Which is when the Switch version comes. But that's what we've heard, right? So we'll see if that's true. And I think, it's good. 16's a good, interesting game. It's not my favourite Final Fantasy game, but it's a bloody good game. And more people playing it is good, so I'm glad to see it on Xbox. I always felt like that being exclusive was slightly absurd anyway. I mean, we would get into the weeds on a different topic there, but the Capcom approach of we just don't do exclusives anymore.
Yeah, I think those days are probably done, aren't they, for Square?
I would imagine so.
Put your mic up.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking to my knee there.
I would imagine, like you said, those days are probably over for Square. They're probably going to start operating like Capcom. But yeah, so exciting, I think, for Xbox players anyway.
Yeah, so do you imagine when it's time for 17, that's across the board?
I think they're nuts if they don't do that. Like, again, you've got to look at Capcom and look at the success it's had with Resident Evil and Sega, and you've got to look at that and say, because what the thing you'll often see on message boards or on Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever is well, does it really matter? Because Xbox was only, Final Fantasy fans, you always see this, Xbox was only 20% of Final Fantasy 15 sales or something like that, and I'm like, that's 20%.
Yeah.
If your game sells for 5 million units, that's an extra million units. It's huge. So you want to be there. So yeah, I mean, you would think. I think they're nuts if they carry on, but I think the whole world is moving away from those, which I think is why you're seeing Sony invest more in like that Marvel game they announced the other day, where that's a Sony game. I feel like 10 years ago that would have been like a third party made game,
it wouldn't have been viable
with an exclusivity deal.
No.
But because those third party exclusivity deals are going away, they're having to invest more. Sony's going to a dev and saying, "Can you make this for us?" Which is interesting.
More announcements from the future.
Speaking of announcements from the future, this is an announcement from the past because most of the original game's cast have been spoiling it for the past month. Persona 4 remake, people expected it. I'm looking forward to this. I love Golden. It's the reason to own a PlayStation Vita. So this is a cool one. Were you not expecting P6? That was kind of the one that I expected to show up, but as far as we know, will not.
Yeah, well, I think 4 first, because it's a smaller project, isn't it? And you think about, it's been a bit since 3 shipped, and they would have wound down on 3 of those guys probably. And also, I think the impression that I got was that they're sort of using those remakes as as training wheels for younger people. 4 is my favourite Persona game, but I think it's interesting because what's going to happen... There's content in that game that doesn't really fly in 2025.
Yeah.
And also, that's content where if it's changed, some people are going to be mega pissed off. So, what's that going to look like?
Is VGC's delivery boy Chris Scullion here? It's over there. What did you get?
I got just a safe Minute Maid blue raspberry.
Nice.
I got Fago, the choice of the Insane Clown Posse. Pineapple flavour and firework flavour, which I'm not really sure what that is, but there's calories in it. So
It just tastes like soup.
It doesn't actually, nowhere in the description does it say what.
If there's any justice, you open firework flavour and it just explodes.
Firework, subscribe to the Patreon and get a firework review in the Off Topic podcast.
Well, go and sit in the cup chair and we'll call it when it's time for the Off Topic podcast.
Sit in this chair because this is...
That is the cup chair.
Yeah.
Just go and get in bed.
Did you play the 3 remake? Like, do you keep up with them? Because I played a lot of 3 when it first came out, so I didn't feel
I didn't
massively...
finish the 3 remake, but I played a chunk of it and was just like, yep, that's Persona 3.
Yeah.
Good game. I like P3, but I'm the guy who always says I'd be really interested to see them remake 1 and 2, and the 2 versions of 2, because those games are really different. So if you remade them, you would... So I guess those who had the really traditional dungeon crawling, I'd be interested to see them remake those games in the style of 3, 4 and 5, but I think that's quite a big undertaking. But then again, if they remake 4 and then they're working on 6, they're going to have to do something else, I imagine, for the second string, so maybe that's when they look at 1 and 2, maybe, I don't know.
Interesting. This show's got a lot of stuff that we're not entirely sure the content of, we just know that it's going to happen, so... we know that we're probably going to see The Blood of Dawnwalker, the new game from the Witcher people.
Oh, yes, of course, that one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. We were talking about this earlier, about another game that came up, this era of like every game is from the developers of something else. Mm-hmm. So, and what's the best example of a game from the developers of another big game that actually turned out to be good? Ratatan.
I mean, Patapon's great, to be fair. That's a really interesting question.
Metaphor.
I mean, Fortnite was from the creators of Gears of War.
Now we're talking.
I mean, I know it's the same studio.
Probably like I'm trying to think of the same game. Radical Heights.
I know they probably did set it like this at the time. Forza Horizon was the Cody's guys, right? It was wasn't it Colin McRae Dirt guys? Like it was their new studio, and we're going to make a new thing. That's now the biggest franchise.
I know the answer, and I actually always thought this was a bit overrated. Time Splitters.
Can I just point out that The Legend of Zelda was from the team behind Super Mario Bros.
Thanks, Cliff. And that's a shit.
That was never the marketing pitch. Whereas Time Splitters, the marketing pitch was from the guys who bought you GoldenEye.
Titanfall.
That's a good one as well.
There you go. That's good. That's ball game. That's the actual fucking answer.
And Cyberpunk, to be fair, because the only reason anyone
I don't think it counts as the same studio.
It totally is. Like, I remember like interviewing people for The Witcher 3 like the year after it came out, doing post-mortem interviews on that game, and them saying, yeah, I've just moved on to Cyberpunk. Now it's different because now they've obviously got a separate studio doing Cyberpunk and stuff, but back then CD Projekt was just one studio that rolled from Witcher 2 onto Witcher 3 onto Cyberpunk. Yeah.
We're also going to see a new trailer for Gears of War Reloaded. Oh, really?
No, is it? I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
So I was told it's Reloaded specifically. I wouldn't be surprised if there's also an E-Day thing. This points to the idea that there's no way that we can verify that we have everything before it happens.
Yeah. Well, this is a great example because we also don't all necessarily.
But
we haven't all necessarily heard the same stuff.
Fascinating. We'll probably get to this later in the conversation, but it's a fascinating insight into the way that information moves, right?
Yeah.
It's like the one that always, because I mean, obviously I'm a football fan as well, so you see like, a lot of transfer rumours and things like that, right? And it's always fascinating to me where people, like the general public, are like astounded that two different people might hear the same thing.
Yeah.
Like one person puts a story out and says, "Oh, well, isn't it funny how everyone else suddenly knows?" Yeah, because they all know.
Yeah.
Well, last year at the Game Awards, I said something to someone in the bar, and careful how I phrase this. I said something to someone in a bar about some projects that still haven't been announced, and literally, I got back to my hotel, went to sleep because I was hammered, woke up in the morning, and I had a text message of someone else telling me the information that I had told to someone that night. So that person had clearly immediately broken the trust, gone and told someone else on the internet, who told someone else on the internet, and then the information came back to me in exactly the same way that I'd said it. And the reason that I knew it was definitely that was what had happened was because I didn't really give all the information. I gave a sort of edited down version, and it was exactly that edited down version that was missing some of the key facts that made its way back to me. So it is interesting. You see the flow of information in the behind the scenes of video games media, and not just media, right? Because people.
But it's how humans work. It's how it's a social thing. Like a big chunk of our job is being social, right? It's networking and connections and sourcing. And being able to contextualize that and verify that, and understanding when it's important to talk about things and when it's important not to talk about things. That's a good example of the Gears of War thing. At some point, someone with information has told someone Gears of War is at the show, and that passes someone, and they just assume it's the E-Day. E-Day's there when it might be the other one.
Yeah,
and you get a lot of when we're talking about internet discourse about this stuff. I can happily say this, because everything's out by the time that this goes out, right? Which is, as far as I know, talking about RPGs.
Tonally be a very different podcast if we accidentally publish it. Spoiling
but,
show, right? Announcement by announcement.
There's some people whose entire business is that, so.
Well, this is what I was about to say. But one of the interesting things is you get people who are in the business of this fucking insider thing, whatever you want to call it. But actually, a lot of the time, it's just educated guesses on some people's part. Yeah. So, and a great example of that here is when Square Enix was on Jeff's big board of who's going to be at the show. People started speculating that would mean Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be there, and then you actually had people coming out and going, "Yeah, I know Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be at the show." Now, unless I'm wrong, it wasn't an SGF or Xbox. In fact, there is a Square game, but it's nothing that any Square fans are going to be climbing the walls over. It's something new, and it's difficult because that all gets mixed in with the truth as well, and it comes back to something that you say a lot, which is what you choose not to print is as important as what you choose to print.
I mean, I'd say that's probably the biggest, the most important role of a journalist these days in the internet age, the information age, is what you decide not to report, right? I mean, certainly for someone like yourself, for everything you report, there'll be 20 more things you don't.
Yeah, and well, this comes down to like we're doing this video under the premise of reviewing the Xbox broadcast before it's happened because we thought it was funny. But actually, there's a more important point, which is anything that we talk about here that is in Xbox, we knew about, we were confident was going to be in Xbox, and we didn't choose to go on Twitter or Blue Sky or your Patreon page or YouTube or the website itself and splooge that out for the sake of splooging it out. Because actually, what's the benefit of doing that?
Yeah,
if you do that, I'm asking you,
let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, I mean, you've got a ton of things on your screen there, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be announced there. Go on, spew some of them out.
Wu-Tang game will be there, a new game from Double Fine people, Atomic Heart 2, State of Decay. It says 2 on my list, but I'm pretty sure that's 3. A new Scott Pilgrim game, Clockwork Revolution will be there.
So basically, we've got the like an absolute goldmine of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me to back in the day when one of my colleagues, Future, you're talking 15 years ago, had somehow obtained like the every announcement at Xbox's their E3 press conference, and then one by one, like every day, started putting one out, and it was like it was like panic stations. They were like, "You're torpedoing our entire show," and it got shut down through. I don't know, through the bosses, and they would, the higher ups would have become involved. But so to your point is the obviously the premise of this. We're having a bit of fun, but it's an opportunity to have a conversation at the big summer show. What is the remnant of gaming's Christmas?
We're looking at the body out of the window.
It's more of gaming's Christmas.
I think it is now, ironically.
But it's an opportunity to have. Ahead of the show. I mean, as we're speaking now, it's 11:03.
Yeah.
On the Friday, so Summer Game Fest kickoff show, the live show is in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And then Xbox is on Sunday.
Sunday morning. Yeah.
To talk about the role of the press, with this information, and how sometimes it feels like quite odd that you will, we were talking about this in the week where it's been a big talking point about Nintendo, kind of not sending out.
Not trusting me.
Not trusting.
Although, well, who knows? Because there's the whole thing of there's the whole question now with that of how hot was that all coming in? Because like, did you see the thing this morning? Someone's opened up their Switch 2 and they've got the developer test firmware.
From what I can see, this is the console that's probably had the most preparation. Right, we're not seeing any stock issues. It was leaking all over the place last year because we know that they pushed it back. Maybe 2 times. They wanted to give this big lead time, so I don't really buy that. And even if it was right. PS5, we had them before the firmware was out, and they gave people the firmware on USB sticks. And Wii U was was functionally much worse when we reviewed it. We understand that. As press, we review unfinished things all the time.
Yeah.
We understand that. So it is about trust, and sometimes it kind of feels a bit absurd. Where we've had loads of instances where. There'll be I'll be vague about it. There'll be like a crackdown or something when people find out you've got information. It's like
I thought meant the game crackdown. What the fuck?
No, they might, a company, a games company or games publisher might when they absolutely panic and move to shut you down when they find out you've got some information. When the truth is that we pretty much always got the information. It's ironically. When you talk about, I saw lots of talk about the Switch thing. It's like, I think it's because they're just paranoid about leaks, and I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
But it's still absurd that they think that if that was the thinking, that the way to shut down leaks is to not give press access, because we're the guys, ironically, that you can trust.
Yeah.
Because we're used to handling. I'd say most we're used to being under NDA. We're used to. I mean, this is my entire adult life of handling confidential information on a daily basis. We are handed confidential information.
I would always rather be put under an NDA and just know.
But it's and again, and why is that? We can move on to that's absurd, right? Is that you're going to, for the sake of. I mean, what do we have to gain from the eShop runs much leaking some, a small detail.
Yeah. One day of traffic for them to never speak to us again.
At all. Yeah, nothing to gain. But secondly, let's move on to why it is useful for our audiences and us that we
That
do
we know.
keep a lot of that information intact, right? And certainly in the past, like the way that we've worked, we've not always been like that, right? We've been like, more, when we were like pure, not specifically VGC, but maybe in my past in CBG and stuff, there might have been times like 10, 15 years ago where we would be more like a heavy reporting, get the information out there. We're not like a long form site. We'd rather do this, However, certainly today and certainly for a long time, I think there's much more value for an audience. I'm plucking this off the top of my head. Obviously, I went to Kojima Productions 6-7 weeks ago. Going out there, having doors open, spending time at their studio, looking around. Some you can talk about, some you can't, but you get an understanding of how the studio works, what their culture is, how they tackle things. Play a bit of the game, some you can talk about, some you can't. Speak to all of the guys there, and then put together a massive feature of this is what this game's about and why it matters. And blah,
but this
blah.
is the game.
And that's something that sticks with you for decades, by the way. It does, right?
Yeah.
Because you go, look, I know this thing's, this thing is, they might have come at this from this direction because this is how they work. I know because I've been there. The alternative to that is you slap out a story that says Kojima's working on this game.
Well, I think
and what is that actually giving to the audience?
my hot take is that, broadly speaking, I think revealing the existence of a game ahead of time, be that a week, a month, even a year ahead of when a publisher wants to reveal that game, is not actually journalism. It's just really, you used the Christmas analogy earlier, it's just really going into your parents' bedroom and looking under the bed or looking in the closet to find your Christmas presents before Christmas Day. And for me, and I realise some people online would say, well, that means you're in bed with the publishers, you're just doing the publisher's bidding, it's client journalism. But I don't really think it is, because I'm not even necessarily interested in running the reveal the way they want to do it. If they want to do a reveal a specific way and I think it's not particularly useful or helpful to readers, I won't report on it in the way they want. But I just think they have a right to reveal something the way they want to reveal it. Now, if you have information on something that isn't going to be revealed, whether that is something that is a project that's died or something like that, I think that is an interesting cultural, historical thing, which is actually one of the reasons why it's really useful for us to find out about stuff. Because then if that stuff doesn't happen, we know that was on the docket and we have the context and stuff, and that allows us to then go in and do some reporting on cancelled game or the demise of a studio or what have you. And the other element, obviously, is when you find out information that's serious. So if you get information about layoffs that have been hidden away or, discrimination and problems like that at studios, that's where the reporting is to be done. Going on social media and tweeting or going on your podcast and saying Persona 4 is going to be at Xbox, I don't think is particularly helpful to anyone. I mean, Persona...
Unless you do it afterwards, like we...
Yeah. Well, the point of doing this is to show that we know.
We cover those stories all the time. When they're out there, the information's out there.
But you're not... But you wouldn't be the ones to put it out there.
No. I mean, for me, I agree, is that when I do a story like that these days, it has to have... The story has to have value to the readers that's not just game exists, right? I mean, I a couple of years ago did the Konami story that Konami were working on a Metal Gear remake and a Silent Hill remake and Castlevania remake, which I still think is not announced, or maybe it is, but it's not. It's not. But the story about that was that the significance to the readers is that Konami's making AAA games again. And not only is it making AAA games, it's completely revamped its culture, and now it wants to work with external developers. In the way, which it wasn't willing, certainly with something like Metal Gear and things like that, it wouldn't do that.
So what you're saying is it's a gut check. What you're saying is you've done this for 20 years, and it's a gut check about, okay, I see in this particular instance a good reason to, because there's nothing worse actually. I feel for people sometimes. I mean, I will never ever forget the E3 of Dreams, where they had Shenmue and Final Fantasy 7, and
it will never be topped.
And so we went out, me and the people who were at E3 for RPG site that year, and we were out drinking, and I can't remember even who it was, 2 nights before the Sony conference. So the night we got in, and someone told us about FF7 remake, and we were like mega pumped and mega excited. And I remember we went, so then one day later,
we go to bed and we're like, I can't believe it hasn't got out. That's amazing. And then the alarms went off, woke us up in the morning of the conference, so not 12 hours before. Someone had fucking put it out, and I felt so bad for them, for Square, for Sony, because I was just like, man. At the end of the day, this is what I mean. What was the benefit to the audience online of finding that out 12 hours early?
Yeah.
What was actually the benefit, other than it legitimately pissed on a really good surprise? Thankfully, Shenmue didn't leak, so that one was the really big surprise, and you saw people in the room going, oh my god. And again, even then, we did get wind, but we got wind of that literally.
It was Last Guardian, Shenmue, and Final
Yes,
Fantasy.
and I remember Shenmue, we got wind as we were. You remember Sony used to do the outside bit with all the food trucks and stuff, and they used to. This is a bit of inside baseball for you. I always used to see people online talking about who got the biggest cheers at their E3 conferences, and people always used to say Sony got massive cheers and Xbox never got any cheers. And I'll tell you why that was, listener, viewer. It was because the Xbox's conference, you used to have to get up and be in the queue at 7 a.m. to get in. And you were hungover and you were miserable, and you'd shuffle inside that.
It's like a 12.
It was like a basketball.
It's like a 12:30 kickoff.
It was like
Sunday kickoff.
But it was like a basketball arena, wasn't it? At one of the universities.
So I remember you get like a Monday night kickoff.
Yeah,
everyone's pissed.
And Sony used to get everyone into that thing outside was it the Coliseum where they used to do it? But there was an outside area.
They changed the venue a couple
and they filled it with food trucks and they flowed the alcohol, and by the time people went in there, they were not all, but a lot of people were very, very drunk. And so when people are drunk, they get excited, they get loud. And then you have that war of words though, which I always thought was funny, because then you had Xbox realising and seeing the discourse that they didn't get cheers at their conference, so then Xbox starts shipping in loads of fans and putting them right in the front, so they're closest to the. So Aaron Greenberg's gang of guys in Xbox hoodies right close to the front who go.
What do they call them internally? They got a name. I'm sure they call them like. Someone told me they call them green hairs or something.
Well,
I can't remember.
We were on the green hair.
But you did. Then you had that. Yeah, so Microsoft was shipping in all these guys who would scream their head off at Project Spark or whatever, in order to combat the fact that Sony was getting everyone levered before they went in. So it's funny because whenever I used to see those debates, I just used to laugh because I thought all of that cheering is manufactured in a way.
Last couple of things before we make the last points. Super Meat Boy 3D is likely to be here, as is Grounded 2 and the handheld, not their own handheld, the Xbox collab with Asus as the big thing. Now that we in the future have told you all this information that you need to know, Andy, do you think if they started just giving us a list on the Friday for all the games for the Sunday so we could prep all of it, do you think that it would widely leak? Do you think, because there's so many people...
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to contradict myself. I can absolutely see why something like this. I think, at the end of the day, our job's about relationships, right? And this is a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm certainly this pod is not about criticising Xbox.
Not at all.
Right?
And to be fair, I don't think they should.
No, I don't.
Because I think it would leak.
It does. I mean, I can see their problem is that you go. I mean, which press do you brief, and then you
end up with have-nots and the have-nots get pissed off.
I mean, I don't want to get into that debate of where the leaks come from, which countries the leaks come from. Yeah, so I can see that. I mean, it becomes political.
Because the way I see it, the point of this conversation is not to say they should be giving us all the information in advance. Because actually, I like a good surprise myself as well. And even if I don't get... Unfortunately, a part of this job is that you don't necessarily get to have the surprises because it's useful to know things in advance and stuff like that. But I love seeing the audience be surprised and delighted. So my argument is not that they should be briefing everyone, because that actually increases the likelihood of the leaks. But it's the point of this conversation is more to say, is more for us to give a glimpse behind the curtain of the complicated optics of knowing things and choosing not to publish it. And and publishers often know.
And I think as well, like it also. That's another point that probably you weren't making, but it is important nonetheless, that when someone does choose to leak something, as a journalist, and you're doing so from someone's access, you've just punished absolutely everyone for your actions, right?
Yeah.
There have been examples recently. I mean, it's like you are seeing. I mean, the media. It's a difficult time in the media, right? I mean, that's why we started a Patreon. That's why it's so massive that we have had like brilliant support on Patreon, and why we're now like here trying to have a real go at this, doing podcasts and videos and stuff like that, and lean into that space because it's the future as far as I can see. Because of that, there are fewer experienced press. There are fewer outlets than there used to be. So there's just less experience in general, and you have seen in the last couple of years, doesn't happen often at all. It's very very small case of instance, but there have been instances where very clearly someone with press access is leaking stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
you'll get like as soon as like we go to events now, don't we? It's a running joke.
Yeah.
Like you go to an event. And when they tell you, it's like, oh, this is under embargo and this is then. If it's always a broad event, right?
Yeah.
Ubisoft, EA, the guys who are inviting hundreds of outlets, right? And it comes back to why we said, like Xbox, like, do you think it leaks? They brief people? Yeah, because they probably have to brief hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Whenever that happens, you're at an event that is like big, an Assassin's Creed, a Dead Space.
As soon as
we sit there and you turn to the person next to you and you go, how soon before this is on the internet? Because someone there will breach their trust. Like as you said, this is worse than looking under your parents' bed for the Christmas presents. This is going around someone's house, being invited for dinner and going through their knicker drawer.
Yeah.
Right? You have agreed to a embargo. You've been invited in under a condition of trust, and then you breach that. Right? So there's even been from Microsoft. They used to do, and it was really useful. And this is an example of how having a relationship of trust benefits our readers. Summer Game Fest. They don't do it anymore. 2 years ago, they would do the Xbox showcase, and then they would do a separate one that only press got to see, right?
Yeah.
Invited press.
Yeah.
They would have an hour video of Sarah Bond and Matt Booty and Phil Spencer talking about lesser announcements, like, backwards compatibility. This is how we're improving that initiative. Or, Cloud Anywhere or something like that. Stuff that's not glitzy enough for the showcase, but is interesting to audience enough. And it'd be an hour and they give it to us in advance and we'd really work on the stories and we'd contextualize it for our audience. We'd have it ready. 2 years ago, someone leaked it. So someone who's been given access to that just leaked it. They never did it again.
Well,
they haven't done it since.
I wrote about it. Do you remember the guy that Jason Schreier ripped his soul out? So this was a YouTuber,
The Real Insider.
The Real Insider.
Yeah.
Who and so the Real Insider was a pseudonym, a Twitter account, whatever, and basically was revealing stuff. But all the stuff that the Real Insider was revealing was all stuff that we were seeing on brief. But he left telltale signs in his reveals, and Jason Schreier fucking worked out who it was.
Yeah.
And
then he tweeted from the
was
wrong
that the
account.
YouTube guy?
Yeah.
Dan something. His
Dan
name
Allen
was.
Gaming, who's still getting interviews with high-profile developers and voice actors.
It's like we're in a situation now where, we this week, because we're in a week where there's no Switch review units and, we're going to see unannounced game number 1 and things like that, and it's because of this shit.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's part of the changing landscape as well, because
of course,
you and I are old enough.
Of course, yeah.
You and I are old enough and have been around long enough. Yourself, not so much, to remember the old E3 days. And in those days, you did just get like your appointment list, and it was like, here's like 4 weeks before E3 going, this appointment is for a Fable game for the Kinect, which wasn't announced, but they would tell you that, and so you knew that was going to be at a conference or something. Whereas now it would be.
That's fair.
An
it's obviously with the caveat that it's a massively different landscape now as well.
And I think that's the difference in the landscape is before, if you had a leaker and it was an outlet could really be punished, both collectively by the sort of the social contract that exists between video game outlets and video game media, and also by a publisher that could cut off access, stuff like that. And now, when it's individuals,
you can act more rogue basically, and you can just put a flyer out there, and people will say, like I said earlier, some people will hear this and roll their eyes and go, this sounds like you just want to be client journalists and you don't actually want to. And like I said, I want to do real journalism and I want to do real criticism and I want to rip a game a new one if it's bad, or shit on a publisher if it's doing something inappropriate, criticize a publisher, pull a publisher up, but I'm just not interested in necessarily just taking away their marketing, because to be fair, I actually think the marketing plans of how a company chooses to present a game is a really important piece of the puzzle, because it tells us something about how they see the game, about what they see as the audience, what they see as the potential, and you do lose some of that if stuff is just farted into the void by.
And that's probably more importantly for me, for the development team have worked up to that reveal.
Yeah,
for years, right?
I've had devs be absolutely heartbroken, and I feel, and sometimes leaks happen, and it's just all this Sonic stuff recently. I don't know if you guys see this, the Sonic racing game, and like
and like
just I don't know how that's happened, but like loads of development material, and so that game is apparently going to have loads of crossovers with stuff outside Sonic, and I'm not just talking about like shit or whatever it is, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Minecraft and shit like that.
And I can't imagine how those guys must be feeling. They must be absolutely gutted. And this is the thing, I don't think that's interesting. Whereas if I'm someone who's been handed that build of that game, or videos of that build of that game, and actually I've got a personal example of this where someone sent me a load of footage of Dead Rising 4, 5.
I mean, more recently. I don't know if you had this, but I had tons of stuff on all the new Silent Hill projects.
But this is
way before.
When I got sent,
Last of Us, the PS5 version. I'm sure.
I think they sent it. I think they sent it. This Dead Rising thing as the example.
DR4 was the last one that came out.
Yeah, so it would have been 5. Basically, it was the game that Capcom Vancouver was working on before the studio got closed.
That's fine.
And they must have sent it to me and a bunch of other people. But when it was sent to me, I was just like, well, that's an interesting glimpse at a new Dead Rising game. Then after the studio closed, I mean, I didn't do it because, frankly, I just never got around to it. But someone did then release exactly the same footage that I'd been sent. And I like that that's out there on the record as, this is what the future of Dead Rising was. This is what this studio was working on. This is where the game was set. This is the mechanics they were thinking of, stuff like that. That is interesting. So if I'd been given that Sonic Crossworlds footage, I would have sat on it and seen if all those crossovers had happened. And if they'd happened, so be it. And if they hadn't happened, then that's when you can publish something and go, this is a great piece of history, it's good for the cutting room floor. And, I can't get
so that Nintendo GigaLeak stuff was like just
so fascinating. And I can't name a game, but I know I'm thinking of a particular person, and this particular person worked on like an official guide for a very, very beloved game. And when you do like the official guide, one of those big books that is like sponsored by the devs, you get access to a lot of stuff very early, and this was a game and a studio that is quite famous for changing stuff a lot as they go. And so this person had been, every time they got a new Steam branch, they were saving it and keeping it on lock, and they've still got it all under lock and key, because one day when the statute of limitations is up and no one's going to get sued, they can drop that and go, this is an absolute treasure trove.
Yeah.
When it's not going to be harmful to the dev, when it's not going to be something that puts the dev in danger of proprietary technology or knowledge or things they might use in sequels getting out there. And that's a sensible approach. A bit like, and I also think of, what's his name? There's the guy who does a lot of like, From Software.
VatiVidya?
No, Vati's brilliant, but is it Lance?
Oh, Lance, the guy that's always like modding.
And he's always got like low-key.
Lance McDonald.
He's always got old builds and stuff of Souls games, but the way in which he uses them is really sensible, and I really appreciate that from him. And I suppose that's what we're talking about, is a sensible application of this information, as opposed to just going, I found out that there's going to be an announcement, I'm going to vent that immediately to gather as much clout as I can.
Right, we've chatted on long enough. We've got work to go and do. Just before we go, massive shout out to our season ticket holders on Patreon. Brand new season ticket holder Tanner Santos, as well as Serkin Toto, Shay Dougal, Matt Huggins, Martinus Prime, Ryan Cabane, the official VGC historian Sam Biggs, Ginger Jotun, BN12, and Mark Edmonds. Also, we are currently running a gift drive on patreon.com/VideoGamesChronicle. You can go and check that out. For every 10 gift subs you purchase, we'll give you a key to a video game, and they're good games. Let me tell you, our gifters so far: Cron, Sam B, Mark Edmonds, Matthew Campbell, and Lister. Games are coming your way once we're out of the smoggy hellhole of Los Angeles. Alex, would you like to promote something? Since we're in the promo zone.
Yeah. Visit if you like role-playing games, if you like RPGs, Japanese, Western, whatever. You can visit RPG site. RPGsite.net does exactly what it says on the tin. It is a website independent website like VGC. It just covers RPGs from a really hardcore angle. So if you want to get into it this week on, new RPGs that are at Summer Games Fest, of which there's a few.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a bit, haven't we? I mean, RPG site's another independent site. You've been running for years and years and years, right?
Many years.
Good people. So go and check it out if you like stats and numbers and turn-based.
Right. Xenoblade, just like Andy. I love Xenoblade. Number one Xenoblade fan on this
Steve Burns used to call them secret numbers games. And it's he used to RPGs are numbers games, but what he used to rail on was secret numbers games, where behind the scenes it was still doing all that bullshit, but he was pretending that it wasn't.
If you punch someone and then some boots come out, you punch some numbers out of people.
Now you're talking.
But I love secret numbers games and overt numbers games for that matter.
This will be Sunday at this point, so we'll have had a full weekend of interviews, coverage from the show, all that jazz. More stuff to come, more stuff when we get home. We've still got a bloody console to review and all the games, so we'll do that too. Until next time, say goodbye, Andy.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Alex.
Goodbye.
And we'll see you next time.
Don't leak things.